All right, so get this. We're going to time travel today.
Ooh, sounds fun.
Back about 2,500 years to
Ah.
grab some wisdom.
All right, I'm in.
That's surprisingly relevant even today. We're diving deep into Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Classic.
But not just for, the military buffs out there.
Right.
We're going to pull out the timeless principles from it
Okay.
and then see how they apply to you.
Okay.
Like no matter what you're going through, like
Yeah.
whether you're facing some tough negotiation at work or launching a project or even just trying to level up in life.
Yeah. It's fascinating how this ancient text, which is often seen as, a military strategy guide,
Right.
can actually offer these profound insights into human psychology
Yeah.
and into decision-making.
Right.
And those insights are just as valuable today
Totally.
as they were centuries ago.
Okay, so before we go charging into the battlefield of ideas,
okay.
one of the most intriguing ideas that Sun Tzu presents is this concept of winning without fighting.
Interesting.
What's your take on that?
Well, you have to remember the context, right?
Mhm.
In Sun Tzu's time, warfare was incredibly costly.
Oh yeah,
It depleted resources,
of course.
it disrupted economies,
Right.
and it caused widespread suffering.
Yeah.
So a skilled strategist
Yeah.
would always try to achieve their objectives
Okay.
with as little bloodshed as possible.
So it's not about being a pacifist, it's about being strategic.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
about recognizing
Yeah.
that the most effective victories
Mm-hmm.
are often the ones that are achieved through diplomacy,
Mm-hmm.
negotiation,
Yeah.
and a deep understanding of what your opponent's motivations are.
Okay.
It's about choosing your battles wisely
Okay.
and avoiding unnecessary conflict.
That's making me think differently about some situations in my own life already. So how does this,
Yeah.
winning without fighting thing,
Right.
how does that actually work? Right.
What does that look like in the modern world?
Take the world of business, for instance.
Okay.
Companies are constantly competing.
Yeah.
Right, for market share
Mhm.
and competitive advantage.
Right.
But instead of engaging in these cutthroat tactics,
Mm-hmm.
that could ultimately harm everyone involved.
Yeah.
Some of the most successful businesses out there
Okay.
are actually the ones who embrace collaboration
Interesting.
and strategic partnerships.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about the early days of the personal computer industry.
Okay.
Instead of fiercely guarding the operating system technology,
Yeah.
companies like Microsoft actually licensed it to other manufacturers,
Oh, wow.
which created this win-win situation
Yeah.
that allowed for rapid innovation
Okay.
and market expansion.
Wow. That's a great example. It's almost like they use their enemy's
Right.
strength
Exactly.
to their advantage, which
Yeah.
is very Sun Tzu.
It is, and it's something that we can apply in our own lives as well.
So, for example, let's say you are facing a conflict at work
Yeah.
or even in a personal relationship.
Yeah.
Instead of immediately going on the attack, right?
Right.
Try to really understand the other person's perspective.
Okay.
What are their underlying goals and motivations?
Mhm.
Can you find some common ground
Right.
and then work towards a solution
Yeah.
that benefits both parties?
That's a powerful idea.
Mhm.
So by approaching conflict strategically
Yeah.
and understanding our opponent,
Right.
we can potentially avoid a fight altogether.
Exactly. Sun Tzu would be proud,
Nice.
but he wouldn't stop there.
Okay.
He also places a huge emphasis on the importance of preparation
Mm-hmm.
and really knowing yourself and your opponent.
Oh, yeah, I remember this part of the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
I found it a little intimidating, to be honest.
Really?
It's one thing to say know yourself,
Yeah.
but how do you actually do that
Right.
in a way that's helpful?
Yeah.
And not just some vague self-help platitude.
Well, Sun Tzu wasn't talking about simply listing your strengths and weaknesses. He was talking about digging deeper, right?
Okay.
It's about understanding your own motivations.
Okay.
Why are you pursuing this goal?
Mhm.
What are your core values?
Right.
And how do those values influence the way you make decisions?
So it's more about self-awareness
Yes.
than self-assessment.
Yes.
Okay.
And the same goes for understanding your opponent.
Okay.
This could be a competitor in business,
Mm-hmm.
a challenging situation that you're facing,
Right.
or even your own internal obstacles.
Wow. Okay.
What are their strengths and weaknesses?
Mhm.
What are their underlying motivations?
Okay.
The more that you understand these factors,
Yeah.
the better equipped you'll be
Mm-hmm.
to develop a winning strategy.
I'm starting to see how this ancient wisdom
Yeah,
can be applied in a very tactical way.
it can.
So it's not just about knowing yourself.
Right.
It's about knowing your opponent just as well,
Yeah.
if not better. But how can you actually gain that kind of insight
Right.
into another person or situation.
Yeah.
That seems really difficult.
Sun Tzu would say, be like a spy.
Ooh.
He talks about the importance of gathering intelligence,
Oh.
using spies and scouts
Mhm.
to learn as much as possible about the enemy.
Okay.
Obviously, we're not suggesting
Right.
that you go full-on espionage
Yeah.
in your everyday life.
Unless that's your thing.
Right, unless that's your thing.
Yeah.
But the principle still applies.
Okay.
We can all be more observant,
Right.
more curious, more willing to ask questions
Okay.
and gather information.
Yeah.
Whether it's, doing your research before a big meeting
Right.
or simply paying attention to those subtle cues in a conversation, there's always more we can learn
Okay.
about the people and situations that we're dealing with.
So, be like a spy. I love that. You've got to be a little sneaky sometimes
Sometimes.
to really understand the situation you're walking into, right? But gathering information is only half the battle, right? The other half is knowing how to analyze and interpret that information.
Okay.
And that's where Sun Tzu's principle of knowing the terrain comes in.
Okay, tell me more about knowing the terrain.
All right.
Because that sounds pretty literal.
Well, in a military context, knowing the terrain meant understanding the physical landscape, right?
Okay.
The mountains and valleys, the rivers and forests.
Yeah.
But in a modern context, terrain takes on a more metaphorical meaning.
So what's the modern terrain?
Think of it as the landscape of your chosen field.
Okay.
It could be the competitive landscape of your industry,
Mm-hmm.
the social dynamics of your workplace,
Okay.
or even the emotional landscape of a relationship.
Interesting.
Sun Tzu would say that you need to understand the the lay of the land
Okay.
in order to navigate it effectively.
Okay, so how do we map out this
Yeah.
terrain
Right.
in our own lives?
Let's take the example of a job interview.
The terrain here would be the company culture, the hiring manager's personality,
Right.
the specific skills and experience that they're looking for.
Right.
By doing your research,
Oh.
talking to people who work there,
Yeah.
carefully analyzing the job description, you could start to map out the terrain
Okay.
and develop a strategy that plays to your strengths
Right.
and addresses their needs.
Instead of blasting out the same resume and
Right.
cover letter to every company,
Exactly.
you're tailoring your approach to the
Yeah.
specific terrain
Yes.
of each opportunity.
Exactly. You're using your knowledge of the terrain
Yeah.
to gain a strategic advantage,
It makes so much sense.
which is exactly what Sun Tzu advocates for.
Okay, so we've got knowing yourself,
Yeah,
knowing your opponent,
right.
knowing the terrain.
Mhm.
It seems like Sun Tzu is building a solid foundation for success here.
Yes.
But how do we take all this knowledge
Right.
and actually put it into action?
Well, that's where Sun Tzu's principle of adaptability comes in.
Okay.
He famously said, be formless, shapeless like water.
I love that.
What he meant was
Yeah.
that we need to be flexible,
Okay.
adaptable, able to adjust our plans,
Yeah.
our strategies
Right.
as the situation demands.
That's a really interesting idea, especially in today's world,
Yeah,
where everything seems to be changing at warp speed.
right.
So this ancient wisdom
Yeah.
is actually more relevant now
It is.
than ever.
Absolutely.
I'm starting.
But we're just scratching the surface here.
Right.
There's so much more to unpack
Okay.
in Sun Tzu's Art of War,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you'll be surprised
Okay.
by how much of it applies to your life
Okay.
in ways you might not have imagined.
Okay. I'm definitely hooked. Let's dive deeper.
So we've talked about, knowing the terrain,
Right.
but terrain can change.
Yeah, of course.
Right, and that's
That's where adaptability comes in.
exactly.
Mm.
Sun Tzu famously said, be formless, shapeless like water.
I love that quote.
Yes.
So simple,
It's a good one.
but so powerful. It's such a great metaphor for
Yeah.
how we need to be flexible and adaptable,
Right.
especially in today's world
Especially today. Yeah.
where everything's moving so fast.
Because no matter how well you prepare,
Right.
no matter how much intelligence you gather,
Mm-hmm.
there are always going to be unexpected challenges and obstacles
Yeah, that's true.
that pop up along the way.
So it's not enough to just have a plan.
Right.
You need to be able to adapt that plan
Yes.
as things change.
You got to adjust
Yeah.
as the situation evolves.
Think of it like navigating a winding river,
Oh, I like that.
right? You might have a map, you might have a compass,
Yeah.
but you also need to be able to steer the boat
Right.
around the rocks
Yeah.
and the rapids.
Being adaptable can be hard,
Yeah, it can be.
especially when you're feeling stressed
Yeah.
or under pressure.
Do you have any tips for how we can actually cultivate this water-like adaptability?
I do.
Okay, let's hear it.
One thing that Sun Tzu emphasizes
Yeah.
is the importance of detachment.
Okay.
Now, not in the sense of being emotionally distant,
Right.
but in the sense of not being overly attached
Okay.
to any one particular plan or outcome.
So you mean like don't get so fixated
Right.
on your initial strategy
Yeah.
that you become blind to other possibilities?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about being open to new information,
Right.
being willing to change course when necessary,
Yeah.
and not being afraid to abandon a plan
Okay.
that's no longer working.
But how do you know when it's time to abandon a plan?
That's the question.
Yeah, that seems like a really tricky
It is a tricky one.
judgment call.
Sun Tzu would say that you need to constantly assess the situation,
Okay.
weigh the risks and benefits
Mm-hmm.
of each course of action.
Right.
And if you find that the costs of continuing on your current path outweigh the potential rewards,
Okay.
then it might be time to pivot.
So be willing to cut your losses
Yeah.
and move on.
Yes.
Okay.
And this doesn't mean giving up on your overall goal.
Right. Okay.
It just means being strategic
Yeah.
and flexible
Right.
in how you pursue them.
But I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
myself included, might struggle with this whole idea of detaching from outcomes.
Right.
We get so focused on achieving a specific result
Yeah.
that we forget to be flexible
Right.
in our approach.
Yeah, I think that's a common challenge.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that
Yeah.
the more attached we are to a particular outcome,
Okay.
the more likely we are to make decisions
Right.
based on fear
Oh, interesting.
or desperation
Yeah.
rather than on strategic thinking.
So how can we learn to be more detached?
Well, one way is to cultivate a mindset of curiosity
Okay.
and experimentation.
Okay.
Instead of seeing every setback as a failure,
Mm.
try to reframe it as an opportunity to learn
Okay.
and adjust your approach.
So instead of getting discouraged,
Yeah.
get curious.
Get curious.
I like that.
And this ties back to something we discussed earlier, right? Being like a spy,
Right.
by staying curious and observant,
Yeah.
we can gather more information about that changing terrain,
Right.
which allows us to adapt more effectively.
It seems like all of these principles are really interconnected.
They are.
You can't have one without the other, right?
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
They all work together
Mhm.
to create this kind of holistic approach
Right.
to strategy and decision making.
So we've got knowing yourself,
Right.
knowing the terrain,
Mhm.
being a spy,
Yeah.
detaching from outcomes,
Yes.
and being like, what?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like I have a whole new toolkit
Yeah.
for tackling challenges.
That's the goal.
But Sun Tzu talks a lot about preparation too, right?
Oh, yeah. Preparation is huge GE for Sun Tzu. He understood that victory is rarely a matter of luck.
Okay.
It's the result of meticulous planning and relentless preparation.
So it's not just about prepping for a specific event.
Right.
It's about cultivating a mindset of constant readiness.
You got it.
Okay.
And this isn't just about, like, cramming for a test
Right.
or practicing your presentation skills.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a deep understanding of your field,
Mm-hmm.
honing your skills,
Yeah.
and constantly seeking ways to improve.
But I think a lot of people, myself included,
Yeah.
might feel a little overwhelmed by that idea
Yeah.
of constant readiness.
It's a lot.
It sounds exhausting.
It does. But remember, preparation doesn't have to be this big daunting task.
Okay.
It can be as simple as setting aside 15 minutes each day
Okay.
to read an article
Right.
or listen to a podcast
Right.
related to your field.
So small, consistent efforts over time can really add up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And here's another key insight from Sun Tzu. He talks about the importance of choosing your battles wisely
Okay.
in a military context.
Mm.
This meant not engaging in every single skirmish,
Okay.
but instead focusing your resources
Right.
on the battles that would have the greatest impact.
I'm seeing a theme here.
What's that?
It's not about being reactive.
Right.
It's about being proactive
Yes,
and strategic.
exactly. And this applies just as much to the modern world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all bombarded with information
Constant.
and demands on our time.
Right.
If we try to respond to everything,
Yeah,
we'll quickly burn out.
totally.
So it's about being selective
Right.
with your energy
Yeah.
and your attention.
Knowing when to push forward and when to hold back.
Exactly. And this is where preparation comes in.
Okay.
The more prepared you are,
Yeah.
the better equipped you'll be to assess opportunities and challenges
Okay.
and to decide which battles are worth fighting.
I'm starting to see how all of these principles fit together. But I'm curious, how do you see Sun Tzu's ideas about leadership playing out in the modern world?
Well, even though Sun Tzu was writing about military leadership, his principles are remarkably relevant to any type of leadership, whether it's leading a team, running a business, or even just managing your own life.
So what are some of the key leadership lessons that we can learn from Sun Tzu?
He emphasizes qualities like leading by example, inspiring morale, communicating clearly, and fostering a sense of shared purpose. These are all qualities we see in effective leaders today. Whether they're CEOs, community organizers, or even parents.
It's incredible how this ancient wisdom still resonates so strongly today.
It does.
Do you have any specific examples?
I do. Of modern leaders who embody these Sun Tzu-esque qualities.
Give me one.
Sure. Think about someone like Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand.
I remember her.
She was known for her compassionate leadership style. Her ability to really connect with people on an emotional level.
She was good at that.
And her clear and decisive communication during times of crisis.
Yes. Her response to the Christchurch mosque shootings was so powerful. She really led with empathy and strength.
Exactly. It's a great example of how Sun Tzu's principles can be applied in a very human-centered way.
And it's not just about being a nice leader. It's about
understanding the human element, leadership, the importance of building trust, inspiring loyalty, and motivating people to achieve a shared goal.
So Sun Tzu, the ancient military strategist, was actually a pretty insightful leader himself.
He was ahead of his time.
Wow.
And his insights are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago.
This has been an incredible conversation.
It has.
We've covered so much ground already.
I know we have.
But I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Oh, absolutely.
Of Sun Tzu's wisdom.
There's always more to learn from The Art of War.
Right.
No matter how many times you read it.
Right.
Or how many different contexts you apply it to.
You know, it's amazing to think that something written over 2,500 years ago
I know.
is still so relevant today.
Right.
And I think what's so striking about Sun Tzu's Art of War is that it's not just about winning battles.
Right.
It's about winning in life.
Absolutely. It's a framework for strategic thinking and decision-making that can be applied to, like, any situation where you're facing challenges or pursuing goals. It doesn't matter if it's like navigating a tough conversation, negotiating a business deal, or even just like trying to figure out your next career move. Sun Tzu's principles can help you approach these situations with more clarity, more confidence, and more strategic thinking.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what's the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
I would say the biggest takeaway is that strategy isn't just for generals and CEOs. It's a skill that everyone can develop and benefit from. Sun Tzu's Art of War offers this really timeless framework for thinking strategically, for assessing situations, understanding yourself and your opponent, and making decisions that lead to favorable outcomes.
And it's not about being manipulative or aggressive,
Not at all.
It's about being smart, prepared, and adaptable.
Exactly. It's about using your intelligence and your resources wisely and always staying one step ahead of the game.
I love that. So if our listener is feeling inspired to apply a little Art of War thinking to their own life, what's like one small step they can take to put these principles into action?
I would say, start by identifying one area of your life where you're facing a challenge or pursuing a goal. Then take some time to reflect on the principles that we've been talking about today. How can you apply the ideas of, knowing yourself, knowing your opponent, knowing the terrain, being adaptable, winning without fighting to that specific situation?
That's great advice. And remember, it doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming undertaking.
No, definitely not.
Just pick one small thing you can do differently today.
Yeah.
And see where it leads.
You never know.
Yeah.
That one small change could have a ripple effect.
Right.
That transforms your entire approach to life.
That's a great point. Well, this has been a real eye-opener for me.
Good.
And I hope it has been for you too, listening in.
Yeah, me too.
We covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we did.
From, the importance of preparation and adaptability to recognizing the power of strategic thinking and choosing your battles wisely.
I feel like we really got into it.
We did.
Yeah.
And, we've seen how Sun Tzu's wisdom,
yes,
though rooted in ancient warfare, can be applied to a wide range of modern challenges.
Absolutely.
From business negotiations to personal relationships.
I think he'd be proud of us.
Yeah, I think so.
For applying his work in this way.
So as we wrap up,
yeah,
I want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay, hit me.
What area of your life could benefit from a little strategic art of war thinking?
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe it's that project you've been putting off, that tough conversation you've got to have, or that big dream you're too afraid to chase. Whatever it is, remember the wisdom of Sun Tzu.
Yes.
And use it to your advantage.
That's it.
And remember, you don't have to be a military strategist to apply these principles.
You just have to be willing to think strategically, be adaptable, and always keep learning and growing.
So go forth and conquer.
Yes.
But do it with wisdom, strategy, and maybe even a little bit of Sun Tzu's brilliance guiding your way.
I love it.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
This was fun.